You know that quiet shift, when someone starts pulling away even though nothing obvious has gone wrong. The conversations are still there. The care is still there. But something underneath begins to fade, slowly, almost invisibly. And the person on the other side can feel it, even if they can't explain it. There's a story that plays out more often than people realize. Not loud, not dramatic, but quietly, and with consequences that only make sense later. From the outside, it looks simple. A good man, stable, present, emotionally available. The kind of person people say is hard to find. And yet, she leaves. People reduce it to a single sentence. She didn't know his value, but that explanation skips over everything that actually led to that moment. Because from her perspective, it didn't feel like she was leaving something good. It felt like something was missing, not in him, but in how she felt. At first, it's almost unnoticeable. She starts overthinking small things, not because he's doing something wrong, but because she's trying to understand why she doesn't feel the way she expected to feel. He texts consistently, but it feels predictable. He reassures her, but it doesn't create excitement. He's calm, but that calm feels unfamiliar. And this is where something deeper begins to unfold. Because the mind doesn't measure love the way people think it does. It doesn't just respond to kindness or stability, it responds to what it recognizes. And for some people, emotional intensity feels more real than emotional safety. This isn't something they consciously choose. It's something their nervous system learned over time, sometimes through relationships that were inconsistent, sometimes through environments where affection wasn't steady, sometimes through moments where love felt uncertain or had to be earned. So when something stable appears, it doesn't immediately register as right. It feels different, and different can quietly feel like not enough. There are small moments where this becomes visible, moments that don't seem important, but slowly shape everything. Like when she reads his message and replies a little later, not because she's busy, but because she doesn't feel the urgency. Or when he does something thoughtful, and she appreciates it, but the feeling fades quickly. Or when everything is going well, and she still finds herself questioning if something is missing. These moments don't feel like warning signs. They feel like confusion. And over time, confusion turns into distance. She starts interpreting her feelings in ways that seem logical. Maybe the chemistry isn't there. Maybe this isn't the right connection. Maybe she's settling. But what she's really experiencing is unfamiliar emotional stability. And unfamiliar rarely feels convincing. There's a quiet idea that some psychologists have pointed toward for years, even reflected in the thinking of Carl Jung. People are often drawn toward what reflects their inner emotional patterns, not necessarily what heals them. So if someone is used to unpredictability, calm can feel empty. If they're used to emotional highs and lows, consistency can feel flat. And without realizing it, they start moving away from something that is actually healthy. Not because they want to, but because it doesn't match what their mind expects love to feel like. If you've ever seen someone slowly lose interest in something that seemed perfectly fine, you're definitely not alone. And if you enjoy exploring these quiet patterns of human psychology, subscribing to the channel helps more people discover these insights. Eventually, the distance becomes a decision, not impulsive, but quietly built over time. She leaves, and at that moment, it feels like clarity, like she's choosing something more aligned, something that will finally feel right. And for a while, that belief holds, because new experiences bring something different, more uncertainty, more emotional variation, more intensity. And at first, that feels alive. But intensity has a way of revealing its cost. Slowly, the emotional ups and downs become exhausting. The inconsistency starts to feel unstable instead of exciting. And the very things that once felt boring begin to look different in memory. This is where something shifts. Not suddenly, but quietly. She starts remembering him, not in a dramatic way, but in small, specific moments. How he showed up without being asked. How he stayed consistent even on ordinary days. How there was no confusion about where she stood. And these memories feel different now, because they're no longer competing with expectation. They're being seen with clarity. There are moments where this realization becomes undeniable, like when someone new doesn't text back, and it creates anxiety she never had before. Or when a disagreement turns into distance instead of resolution. Or when she realizes she's now chasing the kind of stability she once had, without trying. These moments don't feel like nostalgia. They feel like understanding. And that's where regret begins. Not loud regret. Not the kind people talk about openly. But quiet regret. The kind that shows up in thoughts she doesn't always share. Like wondering why she couldn't feel it when it mattered. Or realizing that what she thought was missing was actually peace. or noticing that the things she once overlooked are now the things she values most. This isn't about blaming herself, because at the time, her feelings were real, but they were being interpreted through a lens shaped by past experience. Modern behavioral science, even ideas explored in Thinking Fast and Slow, suggest that many decisions come from automatic emotional patterns long before conscious reasoning fully understands them. So what felt like the right choice was guided by something deeper than logic, and awareness came later. There's also something important hidden inside this pattern. It's not just about loss, it's about recognition. Because once someone truly understands the difference between intensity and stability, they don't confuse them as easily again. They start to see that calm isn't emptiness, that consistency isn't lack of passion, that emotional safety doesn't mean something is missing, but that understanding often comes after contrast, after experiencing what instability really feels like, and realizing what was actually valuable. That's the quiet cost. Sometimes growth doesn't arrive before the decision, it arrives after it. And while regret can feel heavy, it's also a form of clarity, a sign that something deeper has been learned, not through advice, but through experience. So when people ask why someone would leave a good man and only understand it later, the answer isn't simple. It's not about carelessness. It's about timing, about emotional patterns, about what the mind recognizes versus what it actually needs. And that doesn't make her a bad person. It makes her human, someone whose understanding came a little later than the moment required. There are many quiet patterns like this hidden inside relationships, and sometimes understanding them doesn't change what already happened, but it changes how we see it and how we move forward with a little more awareness and a little less confusion.